Hi there, welcome back to Foxfire Forest. We've been having some cold weather lately, so I thought it's a good time to make a 2021 summer closeout video and kind of show you, document the progress, and show you how we did this year. So this is the front lawn area. This was a huge effort. We had two massive dump trucks of fill dirt and topsoil brought in. We used a four-wheeler and I think a mini backhoe or something like that to spread it all out, which was super handy. But then I just planted some shade tolerant grass, and yeah, it's coming up okay. We'll reseed it next year, of course, but hopefully that will just be a nice pasture graze area full of grass. You can see some chickweed in the back there, dandelions, plantains, all sorts of goodies for the goats and the chickens. So we built our standing dog kennel fence around what will someday be the goat barn on the right there and the chicken coop on the left. We got some awesome signs from Mom, but my wife painted, restained the chicken coop, so that's getting ready. We'll paint the roof green to match the shed. But yeah, and then I'm thinking about maybe draping something down over the top to provide cover from hawks and those types of predators, because we do have them around here. I've seen lots of birds get taken by the hawk, unfortunately. He's a pretty good hunter. So back here I'm behind the goat barn and the chicken area, and I was able to wild forage these two Siberian peas from my father-in-law's cabin out here in Alaska, interior Alaska. So I was really excited for that. They're out of the way so the chickens can't get to them. They'll grow up and next to the chicken coop, hopefully, and then provide some shade, some cover, a crop for them to eat, and I'll just put some small rocks so they can't tear up the root area. I also just really liked this willow that was out at the cabin, so I took it with me because I had room, and we'll see how it does. I'm not sure, it was kind of growing on the end of a stump, so it had just one long root and it was through a stump. It was very interesting. So here it is now. We'll see how it does next year. So this is the backyard area, and it's almost hard to remember, but there was like a foot depression up against the foundation, and when the snow melted, it was just trapping an insane amount of water, huge lake up against the foundation. And then that, coupled with the fact that the previous owners probably hadn't ever cleaned out the gutters, so we cleaned those out, and then boom, it was incredible how much drainage there was. So with the help of my father-in-law and some family and my wonderful wife, we were able to take two massive dump truck loads of topsoil and fill dirt and regrade the lawn area back here, replant it out. It's, poor quality soil. You can see all the stones that are in it, but don't need a crazy lawn. I'm happy if some dandelions grow up through, clover, of course, all that kind of stuff. I just want a place for my daughter to play. Did also want to cover the kind of most massive keystone project of the year, which was clearing all of this land with my dad and my father-in-law, and I think my brother might have helped out. It was a team effort. Cut down many trees. None of them left this property. The only thing that was removed from this property were some of the brambles and sticker bushes, and but other than that, everything else was chipped, and what I couldn't chip I used as kind of allotment edges, path edges, things like that, and used that to organize some of the structure of the orchard. So this was a nice little score. My father-in-law and I were clearing some trees and stuff out at their cabin, and he gave me a whole truck bed full of logs, which will eventually turn into compost and plants. It's like a tire flip, but better. But stacking functions. So this is what I was hoping to happen with these. Basically, tons of wood chips are stuck to the bottoms, and if you look at why, it's mycelium. So it's acting as a hot spot for fungal growth and development. Throughout the season now, I've been taking any of the organic matter that I'm removing from certain parts of the land and chopping it up best I can and layering it in where I plan to have trees and bushes next year. This way I'm just trying to prepare the ground as best I can for when I have the ability to put in trees. And I'll just slowly expand. I'll complete one area after another and just slowly expand as we're able. I do have plans though to dormant seed many different varieties of plants, such as elderberries, strawberries, asparagus, raspberries, blackberries, currants, all of the kind of the main ones, blueberries, haskaps, all the main ones. I'm gonna dormant seed them so that they can have a chance to grow, and someday they might be pollinators for my named cultivars. So another huge source of inspiration that I pull from on YouTube is Sean and Sasha from Edible Acres. They do a really amazing job on their property, and I just really enjoy their philosophy and how they kind of tend to think about things. I tend to agree with a lot of it. But this is the beginning of our living wall that you've seen in his channel. I'm gonna be using some different plants, but the goal is to make about a 6-foot high wall to give us some more privacy in the orchard and act as a windbreak. So far we have some high bush cranberries coming in that I just planted this year. They're doing great, put on some new growth. I have wild black currants, 2 of them right there, and I'll be kind of planting out the rest of the row. And then on the end, we have the famous spiky gooseberry, and that I'll just be kind of taking out into that more wild area and letting that take over as a really spiky, thorny bush for moose. And this is a little bit farther back view of where the living wall will hopefully be. These 2 trees in front of me are the apple trees that we planted this year. I'm very happy with how they did. They were able to put on some new growth. The one on the left is a Harcourt. The one on the right is a Honeycrisp. Quiet night in the orchard. I'm going to be planting a Haskap that I got. Really nice looking Haskap I scored. And a Butternut. Buy one, get one half off at my favorite nursery. All of their trees are grafted onto Russian rootstock. Pretty neat. So get them in the ground. And poof, done. So the butternut tree and the Haskap berry are in the ground. I was up until about 1 o'clock in the morning digging all these up. I also planted some Siberian pea and willow. But yeah. So this sloped area here is going to be several terraced rows of Haskap berries, different named varieties, and blueberry. So I'll do one row of Haskap, one row of blueberry, one row of Haskap, one row of blueberry, all the way up that hill on terraces, just like this one. This was the test terrace this year. You can see that I just kind of used a shovel to cut down and form a flat shelf, put some tree logs to act as a kind of check log barrier, stop some of that erosion, and covered it in wood chips. The honeyberries did pretty well in their first year. I'd say the varieties that we got from our local greenhouses, which are these two in the middle, are doing much better than the two that were gotten from box stores this summer. So definitely a lesson to be learned there, but we'll see how they do in the future. Very excited. So this is another Canadian permaculture legacy inspired project. I'll be turning this into a Wildflower Hill. I guess that's kind of what it was this last year, but yeah, I plan to have a couple rows of sunflowers all the way across, and then I'll sprinkle some wildflowers all over the place. This year you can see there was a lot of fireweeds, and when it was in bloom, I'll try and see if I have a clip from that point in the summer, but when it was in bloom, it was just beautiful. The whole hillside was purple. So I really like that idea for attracting and keeping your pollinators around. So this is another experiment that I got from my friends Sean and Sasha from Edible Acres on YouTube, and I'm kind of calling it the Pioneer Mix, for lack of a better term. Basically, it's a mix of things like beans, lettuce, kale, radish, turnips, some different herbs and things like that, perennial herbs, lavender, sage, all sorts of things. And basically I put them in a massive cup, mix it all up, tons of last year's seeds, and then I covered a area of the ground in some straw, and then just wild seeded right on top of the straw, and this was kind of the results. I just did it to kind of see what could grow on what would take on this crazy moon clay soil that we have. It's very firm, very compacted. Every rain it just gets tighter and tighter. So this was a great experiment. These beans and things will be improving the soil, and if I would have planted them earlier, probably had a chance to give me a food crop at the same time. So I'm definitely going to be expanding this concept out throughout the rest of the property, and anywhere I have unseeded soil, I'll be doing this mix, most likely. This first year on our homestead, I decided to mostly focus on the perennial garden and clearing the land and doing things kind of in that regard, but I did want to capture a few lessons that I learned this year, because I do want to increase my annual production next year. One of the first lessons I learned this year is to direct seed things that can be direct seeded. Don't start them indoors, they get leggy, they get weird, doesn't really work out. So things like lettuce, things like radish, especially radish, things like carrots especially, lettuce, kale, all of those, some of the root crops, things like that, direct seed all of those ones. One of the second lessons I learned this year is to start plants, your larger plants like tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and those types of plants, start them in larger containers. So don't use those little 1-inch starts unless you plan to up-pot them right away. Use something maybe closer to a 4 or 6 inch, and be prepared to up-pot them to a 1 gallon if they grow too fast. Also use a strong light, or else they'll get too leggy and it doesn't really end up working out. So the third lesson I learned this year when it comes to raised garden beds is the soil in these beds in particular, in my beds, needs a lot more fertility. So next year I definitely plan to top dress with some compost, some high quality compost, some vermicompost, and maybe this year in the fall I'll sprinkle some amendments after I put the beds to sleep. Overall, I am happy with the annual production we did have this year. We got to enjoy some sugar snap peas. Um, we got to enjoy some blue bantam snap peas. We got lots of flowers, some potatoes. I think our potato harvest will be solid. There's gonna be a few, maybe cherry 100 tomatoes, sweet 100 tomatoes, I think they're called. We got some red sail lettuce. We got a small zucchini, lots of sunflower seeds, a couple pickling cucumbers, and one or two for eating. And last but certainly not least, we got a tiny little cauliflower. Try to hold my hand as steady as possible here for this one, but this is the nature trail. My father-in-law and I walked through here and basically just took out any tree that was kind of in a path that I just pointed out. I just took the path of least resistance, so we had to disrupt the least amount of ground. And yeah, I've always wanted the ability to step out my back door and go on a nature walk. And especially during the pandemic, my wife and I were both working from home. So it was really important to me to have something like this for 5, 10, 15-minute breaks and just somewhere to be if you don't feel like being behind a computer screen or on Zoom or whatever it may be. So really grateful for this space.
Come on, guys. Oh, these. Oh, sorry, sorry, sorry.
I also wanted to just take that minute to say that the primary reason we started this channel is to document our little homestead's development over time, but also to inspire you. If we can do it out here in Zone 3 in Alaska, then so can you. No matter what it looks like, get out and plant a tree, or a bush, or a piece of ground cover. Alright, this is the McGees, closing out summer 2021.
See you next year.
Yeah.
Say bye!
Bye.